All right, hi, welcome to the Healing Your Pet podcast. I'm Jesse Roberts, and this is Alex Roberts.
Hi.
My lovely wife, my lovely assistant. So last week we decided to do a episode on things you shouldn't feed your pets, your cats or dogs, and this week we decided to just do a whole show on what you can feed them, because we intended on tying that into last week's ordeal, but the list was too long. So we kind of broke it up into some sections here. And the first on our list that you can share with your pet, dogs and cats, are eggs. So what about eggs would you like to tell the lovely listeners?
So, first of all, eggs are awesome. They're like, I think most people have heard this before. Wow, I can't talk today. I'm sorry. It's a rough morning. It has been a rough morning. Now it is afternoon. Anyway, eggs are like the quote unquote most complete food item that there is out there. And it's true, because you think about what an egg is. It has to nurture a new life. It has to create a new little baby out of cells, out of just a couple cells. You have to create this new life, and it has to have everything in there in order to nurture that new life. So yeah, they're awesome. There's amazing nutrition in an egg, not found anywhere else. And for most people, an egg, you think a chicken egg, but really any type of egg counts. And different types of eggs have slightly different nutrient profiles, but generally speaking, eggs are awesome. Whether they're chicken eggs, duck eggs, goose eggs, turkey eggs, ostrich eggs, I don't care, whatever eggs you have available to you. So that being said, I pretty much say if you get eggs into your pets, awesome. And no matter what you're feeding your pets, if you're feeding your pets anywhere from just nothing but kibble to nothing but homemade fresh food, adding eggs is awesome. It's always beneficial. So don't feel like you have to do it perfectly in order for it to be beneficial. But I have a favorite way to prepare eggs, and that is by for our cats. Here's one of them here. This is Wit, our little tabby kitten. He's not a kitten, but we call him a kitten. We soft boil our eggs for the cats, and then they just eat that shell and all. We'll crack it in half for them. So, the yolk is totally raw, whites are totally cooked. That's ideal. Sometimes batches don't come out quite perfect. Sometimes the yolks get a little cooked or the whites are still a little raw, whatever. I don't care, but I'm shooting for cooked whites, raw yolk. And then if they're fresh from a farm eggs, I recommend eating the shell, unless you have some reason for you to worry about your pet, like if they have really severe dental problems or something where shell chunks could irritate their gums. Something like that is valid to maybe not feed them shell. I just don't recommend feeding store-bought eggshells for the most part, and this is being a bit of a purist, but because of the way they're treated, if you are buying eggs from a store, they are really harshly treated with chemicals. So I wouldn't want to eat the shell, so I wouldn't feed it to my pets. But if they're fresh, even if they've been washed, but if they're fresh from a farm, then pretty much you can feed the shell. It's got its own benefits. The little white membrane that you can peel off that inside of the shell is awesome. It's actually an amazing source of it's in itself, it's basically a great joint support supplement. Really, really good if you have animals that like that part but don't like the shell. Peel that out of there, plop it on their food, and know you are doing really well by their joints, making for happy joints in the future. So I guess just back to actually cooking the egg. So you want to achieve cooked whites, raw yolk. Again, ideally, that's what we're shooting for, but I don't really care. If your animal really loves scrambled eggs, awesome. Give them scrambled eggs. I don't care. If your animal really loves totally raw eggs, cool. Feed them totally raw eggs. It's good. It's still good for them. The reason that I say in a perfect world we cook the whites, leave the yolk raw, is because raw egg whites have the potential to kind of bind some B vitamins so that the gut can't fully absorb them as it's being digested and metabolized. And then if the yolk is cooked, you're just breaking down, you're losing some of the benefits, the vitamins in there and the good fatty acids. But again, still benefits even if the yolk is cooked, and there's still benefits even if the white is raw. I think that's the important stuff for eggs.
All right, so next up on the list we have vegetables. This is a long list, so I mean, if you want to write these down, probably not a bad idea. I would maybe listen to it once through and then go back and write them down. But so with vegetables, we have a couple different types of vegetables that you can feed your pet, and this goes both ways. Like, cats and dogs can eat them, but we still always say cats are obligate carnivores, so you should, eggs would be more ideal for cats than vegetables would be. So vegetables.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is this is a non-exhaustive list, of course. The list is endless. Definitely go back and listen to our podcast from last week, because that's almost the most important stuff, the stuff that you can't feed your pet. And then we talked a little bit about stuff that's like really important to do in moderation, and some myths, some things that you might think you can't feed your pet, but in reality you can, generally in small amounts, but stuff that can actually be beneficial in small amounts. So definitely listen to that so you know what to avoid totally. And this is stuff that for most people it's pretty common, easy to get your hands on. You likely have some of it at least sitting in your fridge right now, so it's good to know, okay, there's something I can explicitly, it is okay to share with my pets. Whit is looking at the snake right now. Yeah. If anyone is watching this on video wondering what he's looking creeped out by, it is our ball python Bella.
He's in a cage. He's not under duress, but he always just likes to sit and watch her.
Yes. The other two cats don't really care about her. They're like interested in her, but he is really creeped out by her. It's interesting. Anyway, back to vegetables. So my list of, I kind of broke vegetables down into brassicas and non-brassicas. So brassicas are cruciferous vegetables. So the ones I could think of off the top of my head were broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, collard greens, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, bok choy. I said turnips, mustard greens, and rutabaga. The turnips and the rutabaga, it's like you're kind of talking about the root, whereas the rest of it, you're talking about stuff above ground. So it is a little different, but they're all within that same family, the Brassicaceae family. And then my non-brassica vegetables are carrots, lettuce, sweet potato, asparagus, spinach, chard, celery. So, potatoes, like white potatoes, are also a non-brassica, technically a vegetable. They're a tuber, just like a sweet potato is, but I really just don't recommend feeding white potatoes to your pets. Like, there's no benefit to it. It's not that a little bit of white potato is going to kill them. I mean, tons of pet food has white potato in it, but it's literally just in there as a carbohydrate to make the food cheaper. So there's no benefit, so I'm not putting that on my list of foods that I would, okay you sharing with your pet. Basically, for all of these, the brassicas and the non-brassicas, you want to cook these things and blend them into oblivion. This is ideal, not a requirement. It's not like they're toxic if they're raw in chunks or anything like that, but there are these parts of the plants where it's a true vegetable. So basically, if it's the root, stem, leaf, or flower of the plant, which all of these qualify as some part of that, the plant doesn't really want you eating those things, because that's how the plant survives, right? It wants to keep those things intact. The fruit of the plant, generally by having you eat it, You then go spread the seeds, you're helping the plant reproduce. So most plants, although they may have lots of beneficial phytochemicals that we think of, like all the potential benefits from eating these vegetables, those can exist in the leaves, the roots, the stems, the flowers. Also within those leaves, roots, stems, flowers, there are other phytochemicals that the plant produces that are toxic. And again, you know, toxic is a pretty wide range. It's toxic, not that any of it's going to kill you, of course. But, you know, it could irritate your gut a little bit. And people or pets, just universal, if you're really sensitive, especially if you have any type of autoimmune issues, this really applies to you, where it could be more irritating. And I mean, you could notice like side effects, really, from lack of a better word, especially if you have a really good diet or eat really, really clean. And you might notice if you eat like a bunch of raw vegetables, you could actually have some GI effects, or, you know, even something a little bit beyond that. So there's your perfect world vegetable breakdown. You cook them and you blend the heck out of them. And the blending specifically with dogs and cats, you know, carnivores, you're just helping to break down that fiber that, you know, A, their teeth don't chew like our teeth chew. And then B, they don't have, cats have like no amylase in their saliva. Dogs have very little, and amylase is the digestive enzyme. We have amylase in our saliva, and it helps break down carbohydrates. So without that, they just have an even harder time like initiating the digestion of those carbohydrates. So by cooking and blending, you are like pre-digesting those carbohydrates for your pets. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. Oh, and I guess I'll add the main reason I kind of put brassicas as, okay, we have in vegetables, we have brassicas and non-brassica vegetables. I do recommend feeding brassicas in moderation because, although, again, we all, you know, hear all about these beneficial chemicals within brassicas, you know, like dark leafy greens. Oh, I don't think I said kale. Kale is a brassica too. Duh. That's a huge one. You know, lots of people love kale or have it around. I guess maybe they don't love it. But I actually do love it. I don't eat a lot of it, but I do enjoy it. I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I just recommend feeding them in moderation because they do, again, unfortunately, it's these parts of the plant that the plant doesn't really want you eating. So they do tend to have a higher concentration of some phytochemicals that can cause irritation. You know, everyone knows like cabbage farts is a thing. It's really true of all brassicas, and it happens for a reason. It's because your gut is irritated. So some people are more sensitive than others. Some pets are going to be more sensitive than others. General rule of thumb, the more of a clean, fresh diet you eat, and the more or the fewer chemicals like environmental toxins you're exposed to in general in life, then the better you'll be able to metabolize these things. But also, unfortunately, normally the more you'll actually notice the possible negative effects of them. You know, if you have this like really clean body, although you can generally handle things better, unfortunately, you are healthy enough to actually feel the difference when something seemingly really tiny and innocent is actually causing problems inside of you. So I don't know. It's a little disclaimer there, I guess.
Right.
All right. Next category.
Fruit here. So fruit. Fruit may be somewhat confusing because you'll probably notice some of the things that were left off that list. We consider the actual definition of fruit rather than just like, because you might think of squash as a vegetable or something like that. Cucumbers as well. They are fruit. So that's why this list will have that on there too. So why don't you tell us all about fruit? I know I'm contributing so much here.
So yeah, I'm putting like true fruit, like Jesse said, as its own separate category. And so I'll start with ones that I do really like. So any type of dark berry. So blueberries, cherries, remove the pits. cherries are technically stone fruit, I guess, so definitely remove the pits, but I kind of categorize them as a dark berry. But blueberries, cherries, blackberries and raspberries, probably the most common, easily accessible ones. And then we've also got, moving on, those are like my dark berries. Those are really awesome, chock full of antioxidants, like we all know that, right? Strawberries, totally great to share. So melons, whether that's watermelons or muskmelons. So muskmelons are cantaloupe, honeydew, just a million different varieties. Some of them are literally just sold as muskmelon, though. They got that stinky, musky smell, That's why they're called muskmelons. But all those totally fine share. I wouldn't recommend sharing the rinds, just the fruit itself, just the parts you would eat. Those are totally fine to share. Apples, I think most people share apples with their dogs. That's nothing groundbreaking or anything. So stone fruits, other than cherries, so like peaches, nectarines, plums, apricots, definitely don't feed the pit. But the fruit itself, and it's fruit, there's a lot of sugar in it. I don't recommend being like, here, 15-pound dog, have an entire peach, but here, have a little slice of peach, great. That's totally fine. Add a little bit to their food, use it as treats, whatever. Bananas, plantains, and then a lot of tropical fruits. So pineapples, mangoes, papaya, kiwi, all that stuff, totally fine. And again, most of these contain a lot of sugar, so in moderation, just because of the sugar, but most of them also have really good vitamins, minerals, enzymes, like both papaya and pineapple have some really awesome anti-inflammatory and even some possible pain relieving effects from unique enzymes found in them. Rose hips is another one I put on here. I know not everyone probably has rose hips in their house or anything, but you can buy them, and they're an awesome source of vitamin C and a lot of other antioxidants, and sometimes it's a fun addition to especially your dog's food. I don't know how many cats are going to be that excited to like eat rose hips, but they're beneficial. They're in a lot of supplements too. Some people are like, if you're ever reading the ingredients on a supplement, it's like, rose hips, what the heck? Like, is that okay to give to my pet? So yeah, just FYI, yes, totally okay to give to your pet, and definitely has benefits. So now my list of the fruit you don't really think of as fruit, like Jesse said. So summer squashes, like the yellow summer squashes, or zucchini, patty pan squashes, those are really just like a summer squash too. Cucumbers, technically also summer squash, I guess. And winter squashes, so pumpkins, acorn squashes, butternut squash, honey nut squash seem to be a popular thing at the grocery store right now. Spaghetti squash, delicatas, Hubbard squash, whatever. Kabochas, all those winter squashes, those are all great. Again, in moderation. It's just like anything, I guess, because there is more sugar in them than we realize, just because they don't taste super sweet. There's still quite a bit of sugar in it. And then avocado, which we talked about in the last episode in a little bit more detail, but avocado, awesome, but in moderation. Avocado in moderation because it is a whole bunch of fat. So especially if you have a pet that especially if they have a history of pancreatitis, be extra careful. But if they have a history of really any chronic health problems, any chronic health problems, or if they're like an older pet that's been eating kibble their whole life, be a little more cautious with it.
So real quick, if you're talking about fruit and vegetables, like the squash, you're cooking that first, right? And blending it up in their food rather than just giving them a raw piece of squash, just an uncooked piece of squash. Okay.
Yep. Again, perfect world. I would recommend cooking it and blending the heck out of it. However, giving it a little piece of them raw is fine. Like our cats, if we're cutting up a cucumber or a summer squash, they will eat the little butts of the cucumber or the summer squash raw. We'll like make them sit for it, and then they take it, and then they chew on it. It's weird, but you know, it's like, all right, you like it, there you go, eat it. They're weird little disposals of summer squash butts. So yeah, but if I was actually incorporating that into their diet, I would cook and blend the heck out of it. Our cats do not get any vegetables or fruit regularly in their diet. Little treats here and there like that is the only vegetable or fruit they get. But that is for a different day. It's starting to rain here for like the 900th time today, so it's been a very wet summer, and today is crazy. So within things that are technically fruit, nightshades is its own little category. So nightshades, so potatoes are a nightshade, but we talked about those earlier because they're a tuber, so they're still technically a vegetable, not a fruit. But most other nightshades are technically fruit. So tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, probably big ones. Ground cherries are kind of the other ones, but most people can't just go to the grocery store. Oh my. We have like wet coffee in the windowsill now. It's a tragedy. But you know, most people can't go to the grocery store and buy ground cherries. So those are your commonly grown nightshades. I kind of just recommend avoiding nightshades, honestly. Again, not that any of those things are going to harm your pet drastically if you give some to them, but definitely they just have more phytochemicals in them that are irritating and technically toxic. You know, again, not toxic in you give them a handful and, you know, you're gonna put them in the hospital, or certainly not kill them or anything like that, but it could upset their stomach. You know, that's the most likely most realistic situation, upset stomach. So I just recommend staying away from it. A lot of people do like to feed bell peppers to their dogs. A lot of dogs like bell peppers. If your dog likes bell peppers, tolerates them just fine, whatever, use bell peppers as treats, you know, I don't care. I just wouldn't feed them every day. And then my final fruit category are legumes, which is the actual plant family is Fabaceae, but the things we think of as legumes and the whole fruit version. So like green beans and snap peas are the most common ones, right? You know, like, and closely related things, but they're fine in moderation. Again, a lot of dogs love to eat like whole raw green beans or whole raw snap peas. It's kind of an old school thing to do, but I'm sure people still do it, putting like if they're making like homemade dog food, putting like canned green beans in it. Fine, you know, it's not something I would really recommend.
But what about the issue? Not gonna kill them. What about with the, you know, you don't want to give them a ton of peas or anything anyways, though, because it's a phytoestrogen, so it does kind of, if they eat it every day in large amounts, it'll screw up their endocrine system, and it can cause some issues there. Like a lot of grain-free dog foods use lots of legumes instead of grain, and that causes issues long term. So just moderation, like she said. Yep,
lots of moderation. Yeah, it's even been shown that feeding massive amounts of legumes, and this is like feeding lentils and like beans and, you know, dried peas, can block taurine production within heart cells, within the cardiac cells, so that has the potential to lead to heart problems. But that is all, honestly, like from a scientific standpoint, very unclear. That's kind of the end of what we actually do know. Beyond that, it's kind of unknown what is or isn't reality. You know, there's no like studies really definitively saying anything beyond that. So if you're going to feed any legumes, definitely moderation. Oh, peanuts. Peanuts are legumes. We touched on the whole peanut butter thing last week, though, and how peanuts are legumes, and talked about like aflatoxins and stuff. And to be honest, with peanut butter specifically, aflatoxins are my biggest concern, like more so than the peanut itself. yeah, I don't recommend feeding peanut butter regularly. I talked a little bit about it last week. If you're gonna feed peanut butter, good ways to do it, not to do it. But yeah, sometimes using peanut butter as a treat with the dog can be really, really helpful for certain things. So that's fine. If you have a dog that loves peanut butter, you know, just try and use more fresh peanut butter, not really store-bought pre-made peanut butter.
All right, last category is that mushrooms. I see shrooms, so I'm assuming that's mushrooms. All right, so let's talk about mushrooms, which is honestly something I don't really think about much.
Yep. So if you read a lot of, if you look at the like online foods that are toxic to your pets list, a lot of them just say mushrooms, like open-ended. Like, what does mushrooms mean? Are you talking about like the mushrooms that you cook in your dinner? Are you talking about medicinal mushrooms? Are you talking about hallucinogenic mushrooms? What do you mean? What mushroom is toxic to your pet? Okay, so definitely don't let your pets eat hallucinogenic mushrooms. Avoid that one. Again, how toxic is it? It's about as toxic as it is to you and I, you know. That could be its own whole podcast too. I don't know if we'll ever get to that one, but it would be a fun one to talk about. But definitely don't feed those to your pets. As far as, you know, you go to the store and buy mushrooms to cook in your dinner, they're not explicitly toxic. Most animals don't really love them, and not necessarily benefits from them. And the way they're grown, like if you're buying from the store, the way they're grown is kind of questionable. They're such delicate little organisms. You know, it's easy for them to be full of toxins, like chemical toxins. So I don't know. I guess I don't really feed my pets mushrooms, but if I was like sharing something I'd made for dinner and it had some, you know, button mushrooms in it that I'd cooked and bought from the store, and I was like, oh, is it okay for me to give this to my dog or not? I wouldn't be worrying about them eating the mushrooms in there, you know? It's just I wouldn't intentionally be like, here, have some mushrooms as treats. So, however, medicinal mushrooms, so, I mean, you know, there's a lot of them. Lion's mane, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, the list goes on forever. Those are awesome, and there are lots of great supplements on the market made out of these mushrooms.
There's actually like some brands that make supplements for pets make mushroom healing powder. It's actually pretty good stuff.
Yep.
We used to sell it when I worked at the pet store. You know, we managed pet stores together, and we used to sell it there, and it was really good stuff, especially for dogs that are, you know, had cancer, things like that.
Yep. We should probably do an episode on medicinal mushrooms someday. But yeah, they're pretty cool. Okay. I think that's it.
Okay.
Should we wrap it up?
Let's go for it. So, just to quickly go over what we had said so far. There was eggs, then vegetables, then we did fruits. Like we said with vegetables especially, you want to make sure those are blended up if you can, and mixed in with your dog's food, or, you know, you can give it to them or your pet's food, I guess. But with cats, generally avoid fruits and vegetables if you can. They're not designed to handle carbohydrates at all. Like the amylase, like she said, they don't have the amylase to break down that stuff. So better off avoiding that. With cats, I would try to go all animal based if you can. So eggs, if you give them greens or something, it's not going to harm them. But I would just this is most of this stuff applies more to dogs. So all right, so I want to add in, so if you're feeding it, what situation should you really feed this in? Because either people are feeding kibble or they're feeding fresh food. What's your suggestion there?
Yep. So I kind of look at it as, so I opened up with eggs because I'm like, eggs are awesome for everybody. But when we're talking about plant foods, if you're feeding kibble to your pet, and you know, especially if you're feeding only kibble, or maybe kibble and canned food, adding in really any type of like whole real food like this, it's beneficial. Like, it has benefits. It's going to be beneficial to your pet's body. Any type of fresh food is better than a processed food. However, like the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're doing homemade, gently cooked or homemade raw food, or if you're buying like a pre-made raw food from the store, these, a lot of times adding in more carbohydrate sources to that isn't really beneficial, especially if you have a dog or cat with, if they're just sensitive, if they have a, even if it's just they've got a quote unquote sensitive tummy, you know, that type. But anywhere from that, just kind of more sensitive creature to like autoimmune problems, allergies being the big one. But any like serious disease, like cancer, any type of cancer, we just want to be more careful about what we're giving them. And I really just don't like adding excess carbohydrates / fiber into that diet, because we're starting with a really good base, and adding more carbs in itself is not helpful. There are some foods it's like, let's add this because it has its own properties that are helpful for whatever specific thing we have going on. But general rule, I just don't love adding more carbohydrates to an animal that is already on like a really good, clean, healthy diet. I'd rather add more variety of animal-based ingredients to share with them instead.
All right.
But, and all of these are great for treats. Like I know as I was going through, it was like, I know a lot of dogs love, you know, X, Y, and Z. Like they make great treats for your dogs. Yup. Like all of these are way better treats for your dog than pretty much anything you can buy at, you know, the pet store for them.
Yep.
You know, of course, like fresh is always better than processed. So when I say like do things in moderation, I'd still rather have you be like, here dog, have a green bean, than here dog, have a dog biscuit.
Yeah.
Like 100%. So when I say in moderation, a good way to incorporate that, if it's something your dog does like, or your cat for that matter, it's as a treat. Use it as a treat, you know, instead of like putting it on top of their food every single day. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it for this week. And I don't know, we'll have this up. It's on Spotify, and it's on it'll be on Spotify. You want to listen to this, and then all other video platforms, including Odyssey now if you're using that. So all right, well, I'll see you all next week then. And if you love Otto, you should recommend our podcast to other people, because Otto needs food to eat, and that really helps us. And look at how cute he is. He looks so happy.
Look at how starving to death
he is. Look at him. He's definitely a skeleton.
Right to death.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yep.
Starvation.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. Hold on. Ah, my mouse is dead.
Oh boy.